I've got an agenda of two halves. There's a lot of you in this room that have got as much scar tissue with smart metering as I have, but we are duty obliged as the DCC to explain what the DCC is, why it is the way it is, who we are, what we do, that kind of thing. So there's that side of the agenda, and there's the other side of the agenda which might be interesting to those of us that have been around for a bit longer. I'm going to try and balance in between the two. It's interesting to think, you know, some of us have been doing this for way too long, and it's been really hard. And it's still going to be really hard. So the innovating on top of a platform is going to be an interesting challenge as well. But I'll go into sort of who the DCC is first. And I think most of you should understand the ABCs of the DCC. We're a public monopoly. You know, we're licensed by the government. We're there for one single purpose. Part of our license enables us to innovate on the platform in order to make it more economic for the people that have invested in the platform for it to be reused. So that gives us the scope to go out and start to do interesting new things. But at the same time, you talk to our customers, the people that pay me and pay, I think I've got 5 or 6 colleagues in the room, they want us just to get this thing to work. And all the interesting stuff around the edges, let's leave that to one side just for a bit and let's focus on getting this thing to work. So, scale, we will touch every house in the country, every business in the country, effectively. We will have a connection that is ubiquitous. Peter said 95%. I think we'll say 99%. We've got an ambition in the future to have complete coverage of every property in the country with our communications network. Security is a key selling point for us. We have implemented one of the most secure public key infrastructure networks in the world. It's one of the largest in Europe. It's one of the reasons why we're a little further along in the timescale than we were initially when the policy was first cut, because we've had to get the security right. This is serious stuff. This is, in all your houses, there will be a switch and a valve that if somebody could get into the back of our network, they could deprive you of energy, which could be annoying for one person, could be quite significant for a street, it could be catastrophic for a nation. So we've had to make sure that that is absolutely nailed down. And I was even in a meeting yesterday where I was told, there is a threat here. You're not allowed to know what the threat is. Just believe me, there is a threat. It's inside that sealed envelope, and there's only like 6 people know what that threat is. So just believe me and do as you're told. So we're at that kind of level. And I'm like the design director. I'm supposed to look after that end-to-end design and the detail of that piece. And we're in that kind of critical national infrastructure. We take this extremely seriously. So security sits above everything. And we quite often have great ideas that we think this would help everybody move things along faster, and we get the no that says you can't move this thing forward. So again, that's a context that exists around our network. Much as we'd like to be open to all comers, we still need to be aware of the fact that there are certain things that it just would not be sensible for this network to be able to do. And then people, DCC, Mr. Roderick's in the room, I should imagine. We'll get to that one. This is the DCC at scale. So once we're up and running, we were originally supposed to be 40 contract managers, because we manage services provided by the people, Telefonica, Arqiva, etc. So 40 contract managers. I think there was a design department that was supposed to be 2 or 3 people, a security department of 2 or 3 people, things like that. We're not now. I think people have realised that this is a really complicated and hard thing to do. I realised the other day I've got 80 staff, which is a huge team. We look after sort of the end-to-end design, the hardware technology that underpins all this. And originally, it was a 12-month program with 12 months of testing with 1 release, everything else like that. We think we're on to about our 5th release at the moment. And they keep getting bigger and bigger. And we don't yet understand how we do future releases to support our customers. Where we think we might be able to do this. It's getting harder because our ecosystem gets bigger and bigger. We are working with 200 customers. At the moment, we work with about 80 customers. We've got another 50 or 60 waiting in the wings, and we know that will be more. So the energy suppliers, the network businesses, and all those people with interesting ideas. We've worked with 11 different comms hubs, 10 or 15 different electricity meters, gas meters, in-home display units, and there are so many moving parts in this octopus that we've created. It's not easy to implement a change, and it's certainly not easy to say, right, there's your stable platform, let's go on and innovate. It's one of the things we're looking at. But once we get to scale, I think at the moment, 300,000, 350,000 SMETS2 interoperable meters are now on the wall. I'm looking for somebody at 10 a minute, I was told the other day. So there will have been, I don't know, how many minutes I'm into my speech? 50 smart meters have been installed since I started speaking. And that is nowhere near the volume that it needs to be to meet the 53 million target. So it's going to go really, really fast. And when we hit a little trip hazard, or we get a SEV1, the world stops. You know, it's quite an issue. When we find bits and pieces of the infrastructure, just, oh, that card wasn't capacity provisioned enough or anything else like that, and things can stop. And there are vans and vans and vans of guys driving around at the moment, making people stay in at home so they can have their super shiny smart meters installed. And our job is to make sure that this all works without British Gas or EDF feeling any pain, or as little pain as possible. You know, if an engineer gets out there and our network isn't fast enough in responding so that they could install the comms hub, commission the devices, tell the customer what they've got, and then get out and get to the next one, if we introduce delay into that, we're building costs into the program. So that's what our customers want us to do. At the same time, we're a wholly owned subsidiary of Capita. They'd like us to then look at opportunities to get growth out there. Certainly our exec are very interested in reusing this network for other purposes to make it more accessible to other people. And that's what I'll cover in the second half of the conversation. But yeah, DCC at scale. Peter's done this, Nick's done this, I'm not going to bore you with this one. The bit in the middle, the purple bit, that's us. So DCC, we sit at the top, 400 people, providing advice, doing assurance. We do a lot of design assurance, we do a lot of test assurance, we do a lot of security assurance. That's effectively our job. Are those people, are those service providers doing what it says in their contracts so that the overall end-to-end piece works effectively? So effectively, I'm the design assurance manager. But at the same time, we are cutting new bits. We realise that the original design, certainly around the edges, how the DCC serves its customers, what happens on one side of the gateway, all of that kind of stuff was underthought. And we're having to adapt to different kinds of customers, different expectations. Because lo and behold, you put one spec out there to 80 different customers, they all build a different solution and expect you to be sort of the golden unit in the middle that doesn't change. So again, we're not perfect, we're far from perfect, but I think we're doing a lot better because we are actually seeing that. I think we'll be up to 80 smart meters fitted since I started speaking. So we're supporting that kind of stuff and not getting in the way. And then at the bottom, there's all the secret stuff that you know you don't see, the pieces that don't move as much. We've got BT that does our PKI. We've got Critical, who are a great Portuguese software company that do some of the glue that was missing from the original design. And then we have Capita doing our IT. Systems architecture, similarly, look at it's the uses. I wouldn't say this was particular systems architecture. That's what our customers want to do. Change the tenancy, change the supplier, update the bills. So that's the purpose of smart metering. That's why it was put in the network. There's some stuff in there around services public good and smart grid. We thought about them. Nobody's doing them yet. In fact, what people are doing at the moment is credit customers, really. I think people are testing and trialing prepayment, but nobody's going much further. We've had a few changes of supplier. The network hasn't really been sweated yet, and the design hasn't been sweated yet from an end-to-end perspective. We know that some people have problems connecting to their devices. Our network works. Again, people are installing meters, but not everybody can use it in the way that they thought they could. So we're still in a learning phase, which is one of the reasons that we can stand here. I can stand here and say, look, this is the DCC, this is what we do. And when we get to the innovation piece, I'm not able to say, here's what we've learned, because we haven't done anything yet. But we think we are now open for business for innovation. It's taken us a while to get here, and I don't think we really understand what the platform will be able to do for people, but we're here to ask people to come and bring us their ideas, and let's see what we could do. There's no ready-made toolkit to give you. But that's what people are doing with it at the moment. That's what it's designed to do. And those are our customers. So there's all the energy suppliers in the middle, the network businesses at the top. There's a layer that's been created because it's not easy to work with the DCC, the managed service providers. That makes it easy for those people to then do this thing. There's a box in the middle between DCC network and there that the managed service providers take care of. They'll say, just, we'll take care of it for you, pay us money, and we'll make sure that the messages flow. We'll plug into your network and your enterprise systems, and then we'll take care of the DCC nonsense. And then we got the potential users down there. So we are dealing, and other users, I'm not entirely sure how many are actually active and have gone through the user entry process testing. I think it's 2, maybe 3, but there are 250 registered sort of SEC parties in that area. And that grows, because it costs you nothing to be a SEC party. To become a fully fledged DCC user is a right pain. And we're looking at that. That's one of the things that, again, I'll get onto in the second half of the presentation. But that's our network of customers. We're responding to them. We respond to bays. I think it's fair to say, Peter. We do really respond to bays. And we also respond to the governance system that exists around these customers. So it's called the Smart Energy Code Panel and all of their subsidiary forums and stuff like that. They're the people that are responsible for deciding what the DCC does next. We are not masters of our own destiny. What happens with that network design, we have to come up with ideas and challenges, but people can submit a modification, they can ask for a service, and we are duty bound to evaluate it and then implement it if that's what the industry wants. We don't get to turn around and say no. We get around to say, well, that'd be 50 million, and they go, do better. And then we go, all right, 20 million, and they go, fine, we'll go ahead. And then we have to make it happen. We have to slot it all in to a forward path. So again, DCC is not going to come up with any new inventions of how the system, the smart system, evolves. We've got ideas, but we need to enable other people's change. We can't just change it in the way it's used. I think we can change the underlying technical backbone because we are obliged to provide contracted services there, but we won't be the ones running the database or running the comms network. We'll be subbing that out under our license because we're not allowed to do that. And same way that we've learnt, we're about to open a test facility in the Northwest. We thought we could staff it ourselves. We're not, in our license, we're not supposed to do testing. We're supposed to assure testing or manage testing service providers. So again, we've had to go out and let a contract to somebody to sit in a lab that we're building to run the lab for us because that's the nature of our license. It's an interesting puzzle box, the DCC. And then, where are we at the moment? The dark purple is the stuff that we've got there. So we are operating a secure network. Yeah, I'll talk about the other purple ones. The white boxes are the ones that Nick and Peter have spoken about. SMETS 1, meter enrollment and interoperability, we've not really spoken about that. If you've got a smart meter at the moment, it's likely not a SMETS 2 meter, even though there might be like 120 new ones gone in since I started speaking. But there are 10, 12, 13 million, depending on who you listen to, existing smart meters. They're not interoperable at the moment because British Gas came up with the design and implemented it, E.ON came up with the design and implemented it, and they're all tend to be vendor-based solutions. And so if you leave British Gas, your smart meter is no longer smart because there are no sort of back-to-back arrangements in place. And so policy has been put in place, and we're currently going through the significant headache of trying to make that work through our network. And we're setting the barriers there, and I think we're in the final throes of testing for the first tranche of devices that we can then go, right, if you've got this kind of device, you can then push it into the DCC, and then you can use our service catalogue of 130 different requests to talk to those devices, and your smart services will survive a change of supplier. So you should be able to change between British Gas and EDF, and it will still work as a smart meter. And that is a massively complicated, significant investment, and it's going to be a very hard program for us to implement. But 13 million smart meters is not to be sniffed at. That's a big opportunity. It's existing infrastructure, but then reverse engineering it into a design that was never really meant to take it in the first place has been quite a challenge. So again, that's what we're focused on. We're focused on making the current network work, keeping it alive, and then migrating a whole load of nonsense into it, because it was never designed to sit on there. Half-hourly settlement. Tomorrow, I'm in a workshop in London where we're going to tell customers what we think the wholesale electricity market should look like. So Ofgem and Elexon have done a big piece of design work. There's a target operating model design, and this is all intended to get the wholesale settlement network down to a half-hour basis, which makes it more flexible, more accurate, and should actually mean lower prices. Because at the moment, the electricity you burn in your house is finally paid for 14 months from today. And on the future model, it'll be paid for 2 or 3 months from today. But that means that if you're trying to buy electricity, you have to buy it in a 14-month future, which means it's far less flexible. And now we've got this big mix of wind, solar, everything else like that. The wholesale market needs to adapt around this. And the key thing is, half-hourly is being measured in every house with a SMETS 2 meter. And we need to push that up through our pipe, which it was kind of designed to do. But again, there was a question about bandwidth in the north earlier on. I think we can cope with that one. We have to see that it does work. I can smell smoke. Can somebody else smell smoke? It's not me. So, fast and more reliable switching. There's a separate program within the DCC where we're doing work for Ofgem, where we bid for the work to do the design, and then to do the enactment, and we're about to award contracts, whereby it takes you a month at the moment to swap from one supplier to another because of all the data that moves around. It was designed 25 years ago. Some of it could have been done by fax if you need it to be done. We're implementing a system that means that you'll be able to change in a day, bang, like this. And also a system that means that in a house, it won't just be British Gas. You could have a supplier that supplied your electric vehicle, that supplied your white goods needs, and that supplied your lighting. And they could all be separate. And you could actually take your meter point with you and go charge your car up at somebody else's house, and you pay for the energy you use at their house, rather than just using their energy and things like that. So we're enabling that, and that'll be in place by 2021. So that's another big program, but it extends our ecosystem out to say we will have all of the smart meter devices, and then we'll have all of the address and registration data as well for both fuels, which is the first time it's ever happened, in one space. So again, that's occupying bandwidth within the DCC. Distribution networks, discussions are at an early stage because they work on a 5-year investment cycle. It's one of these, where do you want to go? They say, well, what can you build us? And we go around in circles like that. But those discussions are starting to happen because until there's a critical mass of meters and a critical mass of information, they're not really seeing a use case for themselves yet, whereby they can then invest in their systems to say, if the DCC tells me that voltage is high here, I can rely upon the DCC rather than relying upon customers phoning me. And so we need to see the distribution networks tilt in that direction. And then Innovation Hub, which is the thing I'll come on to next. So innovation opportunities, as I say, if one of us gets invited back next year, hopefully, it might not be me, it might be Matt, it might be our new technical innovation director, we should be able to sit and say, these are all the good things we've done in the last 12 months, because I think today is about the point when we are almost open for business. We'll have a new facility in place, we're developing the tools, we've got the resources now, we have an innovation director, and so we'd be able to stand up here and say, these are all the interesting things we've been able to do with people, and this is how we've moved opportunities and thinking forward on that big train set that we've been given within the constraints that I've described. We've started on this basis, so this is the reason we're in this room. We've worked with Will and Rich on their lab over the road. We've had a lot of fun doing that. As of, and I'll come on to it, as of next week, we'll formally be working with Chester, which is all local. We do have quite a presence in the Northwest now. We were 250 people in London. I think we're 100 and odd people up in the Northwest, and we will be 200 and odd people in the Northwest by the end of the year. We're talking to University College London, and there's a whole host of things that Matt, my colleague, has been engaging with to make sure that we are getting the right kind of help on thought leadership and to understand where the needs are, because we know what our stuff does. We can't think of the things that people might want to do with it, and so we need to go into conversations with this. And we're more than open. We'll be going to the Northwest Universities Fair. We're going to be more present, particularly in this area, trying to engage, trying to explain. We're not going to be the ones telling you what to do. We're going to be the ones saying, how can we help? You know, we're there to help. So we've thought about some of the things we can do, and we're proactively going and chasing in different areas. There's stuff on this slide. Are people going to get the slides afterwards, so I don't have to read them out? Yes? Yeah, so that's fine. This one's got small words on it. That's okay. But again, we've looked at the trends, we looked at where we fit in, and I've worked in smart energy for years and years and years. We've always thought of the assisted living and the things that Peter spoke about. It's just we're aware that the bit that unlocks the magic here is possibly our protection of the data and access to the systems, and we need to understand how we can enable that or facilitate that. So some of the things are thought that we've had around, so data. This is innovating with data and the smart DCC. There's a whole range of things we can do now, things that we're looking at doing on the longer term around access, availability, and services, things like that. And that, against our systems architect, that's how we replace. So data availability is around the CAD. If you make it available in the house, how could it be consumed in the house by other devices or the consumer, or displayed in a way that makes sense? Services and capability. Do you need more? Do you need faster? Do you need more granular? All those kinds of things. Do you need a new kind of service? Do you need to talk to the house in a different way? Could we facilitate that through our existing infrastructure? We built an infrastructure that allows energy suppliers to talk backwards and forwards to their smart meters, but that could be a tunnel for any kind of communication into a house. We'll be in every house. It makes sense that if you wanted to talk to a blood glucose system or something else like that, you don't have to go through the meter to do that, but if we've got a connection in there, make use of it. We can provide that tunnel. Well, we can look at how you provide that tunnel and whether or not we're allowed to repurpose in those lines, but that kind of information is very relevant for the security that we can provide. And then data access. If we can get the data out of the house and park it somewhere, it might not be us, it could be a third party, then how do people consume it away from the house? And, you know, what kind of latency do they want? What kind of granularity do they want? There's lots of people talk to us about they want 15-minute data. And that would mean us pinging the meters every 15 minutes. Our network's not going to cope with that. No way. We might be able to cope with that for a few houses, but if that was 1 million houses, bang, it's fallen over. We're not scoped for it. But put the right request in, when we build the next bit of the network out, maybe we could. You know, the business case has got to wash its face. Innovation Hub plans. So the Innovation Hub, I think it's fair to say, is both a space and a concept. There will be a room somewhere near Manchester Airport where there will be stuff and people can go along and try and plug their stuff into our stuff and see if it works. And you won't have to be a DCC user. You won't have to have worked through GBCS or anything else like that. There will be people in that room that go, what have you got? I'll see what I can do. And we'll help. And we'll stand up our resources. Our own experts and the experts from our service providers will be on hand and we'll be funding that. We don't understand how we'll charge for it yet, and we don't understand how we'll allot time or space, because, you know, some people will just come and park themselves there and never move on. We need to understand that challenge. One of the reasons we're talking to the universities is how do you guys do that? Because we've not done that before. We've had workshops and we've tried to speak to people, and everybody's got a different view of what we should be doing to help them. So we need to find sort of a happy, flexible medium in there. And so the Innovation Hub, there will be a space, but it's also it'll be a service, and it'll be something that's accessible remotely. Because some people go, I don't want to come and plug into a comms hub. Just give me the half-hour data in a format as it would be in real life if I could get it in a house or if I could get it on the edge of a cloud, and let me consume that. Give me anonymized data. Well, I don't care. Just give me some data. And at the moment, we can't, but we will be able to soon. I think we're very close to it. And that, again, will be part of the Innovation Hub concept, but it's not fully formed. I think we've got a view of what the product might look like. We're going to go out and seek further views of what that product might look like, and then we're going to go around and deliver that. But again, it's not going to be one of these things that, unlike the rest of our system, it's not going to be nailed down to say, that's it, you need to comply with this and do that. This is about us trying to enable people to do really interesting things with our network that then, when they get really interesting, we're able to invest in and then move forwards. And for those of you that do want to get through a bit of pain, if you want to become a DCC other user, Peter mentioned it earlier on. Now, this isn't us. This is the energy industry. This is how the energy industry works. This is the simplest way to engage with the DCC at the moment. And this is the light touch version. If you wanted to be an import supplier as an electricity or something heavier than that, one of the more licensed roles, this would be 25 different blobs on there and the steps you have to go through. So, you know, you have to be a sec party. I said, I don't know how much it is, 300 or 400 quid, something else like that. It takes a couple of weeks. You put an application form in, you get it back, and everything else. And then you get all the paperwork, you get invited to some really wonderful meetings. Then you have to get a DCC gateway connection, which is just a fixed line. You know, you can have a fat one or a thin one, everything else like that. And then you need some way of getting on the box. All the materials on our website for this kind of thing. You have to buy or build a DCC user interface. So that's you taking the schema that we publish in the XML and then making sure that you can then comply with it to go through. And these people across the bottom can help you with that. They'll sell you that service. Those are the managed service providers, that layer in the industry that we never envisaged that's popped up out somewhere. You have to go through a security assessment with Deloitte to prove that you've got privacy policies, you've got security policies, you passwords on your networks and things like that. So somebody will come and have a sniff around how you're set up, which is a bit interesting if you're a one-man band, if you're a graduate or something else like that. But those are the rules. If you want to get in, you've got to prove that you can protect the data that we're going to give you. We can't just let idiots in messing around in the back of our system, even in testing, because there's some really serious stuff goes on in that environment where you would be. You have to do security testing, and you have to do user entry testing, which is like, all right, here's a script, follow that script to 10 different scenarios, and prove to us that you can do this, you can form and receive messages without it causing problems, and that you're not going to burn the environment down, because then we get a lot of problems from the customers that actually pay for it. DCC user is free. We don't charge people for access to our network. The way that we recover our costs is through renting comms hubs to the big energy suppliers. That's basically the way we do costs at the moment. So we don't charge for, if you went through this process and you had 10,000 sites and you were sucking the data out, that would all be free. We wouldn't charge for it as things stand at the moment. And then this is the interesting bit, I think, relevant, that I tacked on to the end of the standard slides that we've got. As of, when's the 12th? Is that Tuesday? It must be Tuesday. As of 12th, we're hosting an interoperability event, and it's the first innovation event. So the interoperability events so far, we've hosted them since day one. They used to be in the DCC offices. We've had them at the Bayes offices. We've had them all over the place. We get in a room, and guys with laptops and dev boards with blinking lights all sit there and try and ping things off comms hubs with our resource. And we run through scripts and go, right, today's test is, can we join that CAD to that meter? And everybody will have a go. And it's like the secret room of how this thing's actually developed and how we are actually able to go out and bang out 10 meters a minute at the moment. It's not sitting in meetings arguing with the government about whether the spec looks like this. It's actual work being done by people doing interoperability testing. And it's moved things forward. So next week, we're going to look at 868 gas meters if somebody brings one along. We're going to look at twin element electricity meters if somebody brings one along. So, and eventually we will look for the gentleman that's looking for polyphase. If somebody brings a product, this is where they'll bring it, to make sure that it will connect to our comms hubs, and therefore that things can move from an end-to-end basis. So this is where you do your product development. Consumer access devices, we know will be there, and the things we're looking at there are with hand stability, so can it survive things coming in and out, dropping in and off, changes within the system, future data change supply, so I'm going to change supply on the 1st of March or whatever, we'll simulate that and see if the system holds up to that. Export metering, which is a tricky one. If you start saying you've got one supplier for import, one supplier for export, our design isn't actually optimized for that kind of thing, but we're going to explore the corners and see how that feels. So it's, again, interoperability event is a safe space. It's generally for the meter manufacturers. But innovation, the first one, is open to all SEC parties, and in fact, I think should be open to everybody if they give us fair warning as it turns up. So next week, we are expecting to see a HCalc. And now some of you won't know what HCalc is, but it's a hand-connected auxiliary load control switch. Isn't that a beautiful? Is that one yours, Peter? HCalc? Yes, there you go. We like to invent acronyms. But HCalc is effectively, if you've got storage heating at the moment, and there's a switch that will switch things between one network and another, so you've got night and day and everything else like that. This is taking that into a concept as it's a separate device, and therefore you could operate a separate circuit. So a heat pump, or a pool pump, or an electric vehicle, or anything else like that. So you would have a remote control switch within a house that's connected to SMETS 2. So this is quite a big deal for the people that are looking at the whole home energy stuff. So we're expecting a physical HCalc to turn up at Chester next week, and we're going to start playing with it, which is the first time. Possibly a battery as well. Let's see how what's coming through. So that's an interesting thing. And again, these are reasonably public, but private when people need to be. We adapt around this, we facilitate this, we provide the resources. People turn up, we work against the script. And actually now, Manu, who's in the room, if you want to catch him, one of his guys looks after these events, and he's dropped a proper systematized approach to this. There's a strategy in place, there's a whole bunch of documentation, and we're following an ISO standard about how you run these kind of events. And so it's much more professional now than it used to be, and we're seeing the benefits from it. People are really interested in the work that we're doing there, and it's not that well known. And then finally, I think, is that you, Gareth? Yes, so Gareth stood there in Preston Brook, I think, in the boardroom at Preston Brook, which is where we held the last one. And we do education events here. You know, if people want to learn what does the spec for a HCalc look like, or what will the spec for a PP mid look like, we'll sit there with the people and say, well, this is what we've got, and this is how we've learned these things. So again, it's a safe space for actual innovation, as well as understanding interoperability. And again, this is what DCC is intending to do more of and take care of within the innovation space that we're going to build out in Manchester. So that's me. Matt's in the room. Matt's our business development manager, who look after the innovation hub and everything else like that. And Stu is the guy that looks after the test events, but Stu's boss is here as well today. I have to nip off before the final coffee break, but you'll catch me at lunchtime.
Okay, so thanks very much, Simon. Just before we break for lunch, have we got any quick questions for Simon? No, you've already had one, Dulcinea. Any quick questions for Simon before we break for lunch? Go on then, since nobody else is.
No, I should say that now I don't want to ask a question now. What is the provision if, for example, as a third-party supplier of a device to one of these homes that DCC provides a network. If I only want to use the DCC network, so I'm not using any of the data, I'm not linking to any of the other devices in the home, I just want to make my data, my device, go through your network and then feed to my server, for example.
So you'd want to be, you want to use our sort of backhaul
Yes.
between the house and, then your device would fit into an existing classification. There's ones that need security provision that can control things, and the ones that just read data, the type 2 device, which is like a CAD. That's fine. What you need to find is to either become a DCC other user so that you can log on and then suck the data out through your own gateway, or get a third party to proxy that for you. So one of the managed service providers might be able to do that on your behalf. So the network's there, it's just how would you can connect into the house, that's fine, but you do need that sort of head-end kind of interaction so that you can connect to these things and recover the data.
But as an SME, I would deal directly with DCC, or would have to go through
We can help you get established, but we'd need to understand your particular design, if you see what I mean. And then we can say, well, yeah, that looks like it would work, or you might need to work with other people in order to realise your vision.